There we go. We're actually concluding our fourth year of monthly programs in a couple of months. I'm Steve Miller, your host tonight. Pat Miller probably will join us. She's in a different meeting and will join us in maybe an hour. I'm not sure. For all the folks who have registered, in a couple of days, I will mail the links to tonight's recording, slides, and Q&A information we didn't have time for tonight. I really greatly admire our speaker tonight, Jim Price. His last name, Price, defines what you will hear about tonight. His goals may sound far-fetched, but I have learned firsthand now with experience that Jim practices what he preaches. Jim is just really arrow-focused on a set of principles. His work enhances customer comfort, assures a healthier future with clean air, clean water, conservation of resources, while implementing, let's make sure I need to admit a couple more people. There you go. So Jim's talk, though, is going to be long, and likely an hour from now, no later than 8:15, Jim will entertain questions. So we're holding questions at the end. But in the meantime, please enter your questions in chat as you think of them, and we'll try to collate them and handle them at the end. Jim is willing to stay connected as long as people have questions. He actually said overnight. I would go to bed and leave the recording. In fact, I'll shut off the recording before the questions, and then I would leave you be if that's what you'd like. I have 24-hour service here on Zoom. So I plan to continue recording. Actually, Jim, we didn't quite settle it, but I could continue recording while people have questions and while you answer,
Sure.
Because you could use those snippets. You can edit into smaller snippets, which might be helpful in the future. Probably what I'll do though is only post your talk. So in a couple of days, you'll be receiving the main body of the recording, and we'll be working on the Q&A probably. My guess is it might take a few days. I don't know what you feel about that, Jim.
No problem.
So,
do whatever. I'm transparent. I gave out my social security number, remember? By accident.
in my version, I have deleted your social security number.
I just blocked it out on the whited out on the slide presentation.
Okay. I would like to take you to if I can get to it here. I'm going to share screen myself and take you to the PowerPoint. Here we go.
So am I on the PowerPoint or are you going to control it?
You should see now my screen.
Okay.
And I just wanted to put a plug in for our New Jersey Electrification Coaching Network. And we have a lot of people like Jim and others who are eager to please to help you. And it's a free service. You can request an electrification coach to answer your own questions by providing our form. If you scan this form, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but if you scan this with your phone, you'll be taken to the form, answer the questions. Why do you want to electrify your home or apartment? Do you have a time frame? Do you have estimated cost in mind? And other simple questions. And then we will assign a coach. So it's easy to do. I encourage people who need help to actually do this. So with that, I'm going to stop share. And now I'm turning the floor over to Jim Price, who hopefully will be able to share the screen and take off with the next hour.
Okay, so I share it. And there. Here. Is that correct?
Yes, it says you've started screen sharing.
Excellent.
There we go.
All right. Say when.
When you're up.
Okay. All right. So I'm Jim Price, and who am I and who cares, right? So how did I get here and why it matters? So when I was, first of all, I started a business. with a social purpose. And I want to be, we have an innovative approach which enhances customer comfort, assures a healthier future with clean air, clean water, conservation of resources, while implementing a cost-effective energy strategy for a more sustainable world. So that's our goal as a company. And then how I got started here and how I found my way here is like how a lot of people find themselves into construction. I was 19 years old. My next door neighbor, who we just moved next to, said he needed somebody to go to work for a summer job. I was the kid. I needed tuition money for Seton Hall, so they paid me piecework. I knew nothing about insulating houses. All I knew is that the more I did, the more I got paid. Key lesson in life, right? I had no skill, no knowledge, 2 weeks of training, and I was a tall, fast, skinny kid who could make some money. So the first year I made enough money for most of my tuition. And then I found out that all my Pell Grants were removed because my parents moved out of New Jersey. And then I had to really hustle. So the following year, I went back to the job because I could make a lot of money fast. So I did, and I paid for another year's tuition. But while I was there, I worked on a house only briefly because we were all called in to go fix what somebody else installed. And it was in Foxborough, Massachusetts. And it was a passive solar home. They built it, it was 2,443 square feet of heated area. I was fascinated by all the things that they were doing. They had a $30,000 government grant, and they wanted to create heat in a house where they wouldn't use it would essentially be a zero energy home. And the guy was telling me all the things, and I got hooked. I just said, that's it. I love this stuff and I want to do it. Well, I had to go back to college. So since then, I graduated Seton Hall, 20 years in corporate America. I got married, became a father. I led a very conventional life. And then I became the victim of business consolidation when my customers were all going away because they were consolidating, going out of business, filing Chapter 11. In the middle of all that, my ex said, I want a divorce if you're not having a good living. I wanted to start my own business for a long time anyway. That couldn't be outsourced. So I started looking at solar. I decided to start a solar company. I searched for every bit of knowledge in 2005 I could get, which led me to the Vermont Solar Fest, believe it or not. It was mostly a bunch of hippies that were doing solar as a business. And in Vermont, they didn't have a lot of power lines in some areas. So it was a viable business there. When I got back, I enrolled in solar school. I enrolled in electrical school. And I went to my first clean energy meeting in 2006 in September, and we were all waiting for the 2007 incentive program. In 2006, they were paying 80% of installation cost. And in 2007, they said, I know you're thinking we're going to get a great program here, but we're suspending the program for 3 years. I was devastated. I did all the prep work, and now I had nowhere to go. So I took my solar voltaic design, so I am a little educated in that. I met a guy named Joe Mizzi who said, Jim, I know you got stiffed on the solar program, but we're about to get into clean energy, home performance with Energy Star. So I said, well, that can't be outsourced. So I pivoted. I thought I knew the insulation business because I had 2 years or 2 summers of insulating houses. Um, so I thought I was going to be really good. No, I ruined a lot of houses in that time period because I did what the contractor told me to do. And I made a lot of money, but it wasn't the best way to do anything. So in 2007, I became BPI certified. And in 2007, we were allowed to go to work. We did 3 of the first six houses ever done in the home performance program in Energy Star in New Jersey. In 2007, I hired some HVAC contractors to do some duct work and do some HVAC work, and I found out that they were horrible. I immediately decided I needed to learn more about HVAC, and I enrolled in night school at Somerset County Technical Institute while I was working in the day. So in the daytime, I'd go out and work, try to recruit customers, insulate houses, and then I go to night school 4 nights a week and raise my son with swim team all at the same time. In 2008, we did 8 more houses out of the next 14 that were done. And there was no training anywhere on what we were doing. So I had to go all over the country to get training. And there was a company, or it's actually an organization called ACI, Affordable Comfort. And I would go to Cleveland, Baltimore, Colorado, Saratoga Springs, New York, anywhere they were offering training seminars. And I would sit through the classes, and then it was broken into two parts. Mostly there were agency people, and who agency people are they're the ones who run the programs for either the utilities or for the states. And those people were learning what the correct way to do things was so that they could implement to contractors how they ought to be doing the work. And it's kind of funny because when I flew all over the country, it wasn't people from contracting, it was people from agencies. So I know more agency people who got a great education through all these seminars than I do contractors. The contractors that I met were either at meetings in New Jersey or they were in ACA, Air Conditioning Contractors Association. And, these are the people who I affiliated with on the contractor level. So to this day, I have many agency friends all across the country, um, multiple organizations. Now they merged along the way to become the next thing, which is called Building Performance Association. And last year I went to Minneapolis, and when I went to Minneapolis, the majority of the people out there were agency people again, and only one or two contractors. So nothing has really changed. Is the people who need this education the most are not attending, and the people who are going to enforce this stuff um, are attending, so they know the correct way it needs to be done. But the guys on the ground are not doing things the correct way, which is why when everyone asks me, "Do you know a good contractor?" I really don't, because nobody's had the tenacity to get the education that I have. And everyone seems to think that all contractors are on the same level, and they absolutely are not. Anyone who had a company or a business before 2014 never had a license. So in order, and that was myself included, because a license was not required in the state of New Jersey. HVAC contractors to be a licensed no, to be a contractor who did HVAC, you needed a tax ID, a business registration, business liability insurance, and a universal EPA 608, which is really just basic touching, and it tells you don't release refrigerant to the atmosphere. There was no formal training, there was no apprenticeship program, and anybody could go out and get now it's called a contractor's HIC license. Um, and you could sign up and have a registration, home improvement registration. That's all you needed. And you were in. So even if you had no experience. So in 2014, the license law finally took effect and contractors had to be licensed. But here's the thing, anybody who was already in the business was automatically grandfathered in. So all you had to prove is that you were in the business. Now, in my case, they asked you for education too. And in my case, I had reams of data on education because I flew all over the country. I took all these classes and I would go to every manufacturer's training. I couldn't learn enough fast enough because I didn't want to make mistakes. Mistake cost money, and I wanted to make money, not spend money fixing problems. So as a matter of fact, there were people who were working in the office of other HVAC companies who signed up for and received licenses. That's how easy it was to get the license. So when a contractor tells you, "I'm licensed," well, if it was before 2014, it doesn't really mean that you're smart. It just means that you were there when we all got grandfathered in. Now there's a formal training program that's required. 5-year apprenticeship program is required. You must pass 2 licensing exams, a business and law exam, HVAC trade exam, of neither of which I took or anyone else who's licensed today. So, and then you still have to have the normal business licenses and a registration and insurance and workman's comp and surety bonds, tax ID numbers. So just by the fact that you're a licensed contractor, doesn't mean that you're smarter than everyone else. It all depends on the education that you are willing to get. And the other thing that's very important to understand is that when a builder builds a house, he builds it to be as cheap as possible, which means you're going to get the lowest quality product. You're for the least amount of money because nobody's asking for quality HVAC equipment when they buy a house or have it built. And if they do, they charge you for the entire system to upgrade to the good stuff. So you're not getting that. And when customers come in, this is very, very important to understand about contracting. If you don't know what to ask for, you will not get it. And Steve and I have had this conversation in the last week, I guess, Steve. And
Yes.
he's looking at his daughter's house and he said, "Hey, can you kind of weigh in on what this is?" And I said, "Sure." And I sat down, I did a load calculation, and I said, "This is what you need. And by the way, here's a list of things that you need to ask for when you're getting the work done." And he said, "Okay." And he told another contractor who said he did a load calculation. And he said, "Look, I had another guy do a load calculation, and here's his here's his load calculation. And you said this is a 3-ton system, and he's not close to that." And then he said you ought to do this and that you're oversized and we need to not turn my daughter's house into a wet clamshell. We want to make it dry and warm in the winter and dry in the summer and comfortable. And then we want to seal ducts and we want to put them in the attic. And Steve, what did he do? After you told him you wanted a good job,
Oh, they said this is too much grief. Goodbye. Literally.
they bailed.
They
So
failed.
they were going to install a Frankenstein in his house for a significantly amount of money more than what Steve is about to pay. And um, they were just going to do the cheapest possible stuff. So they weren't giving him what he really needed to get for that house. So, and here's just an example of I was talking to Steve earlier and I said, people say I'm going to put new registers in, but they don't understand the difference about the value of what you're getting. So, the performance of equipment versus the cost is more important to have high performance than it is to have cheap. So, you really have to understand what you're asking for to ask for premium product or premium installation. And then you have to understand that there's a lot of cheap junk out there that doesn't work. And the example I use here is what's called a Hart and Cooley high performance um, uh, uh, diffuser. And what this is going to do is it's going to blow air out of your ceiling and it's going to blow it down 14 feet to the ground and circulate the air in your room, which will give you a great comfort. But if somebody's trying to be cheap, what they'll do is they'll supplement something which is a $4 register, which doesn't have any throw, will not circulate any air, and all your heat will sit up on the ceiling instead of circulate through the room. So they're not apples to apples. They're not even close in performance. So the performance of the work is more important than the cost. The money you're saving on um, the just the register isn't worth the performance job that you lose because now your house is never going to be as comfortable as it could be. So I think it's important that you understand that, one contractor is not giving you something that the other contractor is when he's cheaper because he's cheaper for a reason. There's something he's not doing, but you don't understand what that is because you don't understand what the job is to begin with because it's not your business. Where somebody like me, it is my business. And I do understand the difference. And I go to school and I learn. So, and when the beginning, when I wanted to learn how to do this, I was fortunate enough to meet this guy, Chandler Von Trader. He was in charge of um, the Home Performance with Energy Star program. And I called him up and contacted him and I said, "Look, you guys made a video CD on air sealing, and I would like to get a copy of it. How can I do that?" And he said, "How did you find me?" I said, "Well, it wasn't easy, but I did some research and found out that this CD on training on how to air seal existed, and I want to know because I can't find out how to air seal. And part of our program says that we have to air seal, and but nobody says what the best way is or even how to do it." And he said, "I'll get you the information." And I said, "Where else can I get an education?" And he said, "The first thing I had to do was go to Affordable Comfort and start flying all over the country at some significant cost to me to learn the trade because nobody understood the trade except for the agency people." So for Chandler, I thank him for that. And he pointed me in the right direction. We've become friends and we go skiing once in a while. I haven't been skiing in a couple of years with him, but I sure would like to hook up with him again. The Trump administration downsized his department and rearranged everything on the first term, so things have changed. But I got BPI certified in 2007 for all the certifications required to be in the program. 95% of the equipment that's currently replaced today is done without a load calculation. This is so important because when equipment was originally installed by the builder, remember I said it was the cheapest one they could find? It also was not efficient. And there was equipment that has been installed, and I'm going to give you a timeline later, that was about 50% efficient prior to 1992, which means you paid $1 for gas and you got 50 cents worth of heat. And the efficiency standards were set in 1987, which means if you had a house built before 1987 and you had equipment installed before 1987, you didn't have any standards of efficiency and you were just buying junk. So when a contractor comes to your home and he says, "Oh, you have a 100,000 BTU system? I'll put another 100,000 BTU system in." It's malpractice because that system was never sized correctly the first time. So what was done, it was called rule of thumb, and it was based on square footage. But the square footage of a well-built home and the square footage of a horribly built home are going to require different size pieces of equipment. But rule of thumb is not a good way of doing it. So this is the rule of thumb method, and everyone's going to get these slides, so I'm just going to go through fast. Essentially, they say that before 400 cubic feet, or I'm sorry, 400 square feet of space would require 1 ton of cooling, and about 2,000 square feet of in the home would require about 5 tons of heating. That's insanely oversized, especially for the building that's done today, even the old stuff. So the things that we want to do is we want to reduce the burden of the house, and then we want to downsize tremendously the equipment that's been installed. And by doing that, you will, believe it or not, be more comfortable on the cooling, much more comfortable on the cooling. And on the heating side, your bill is going to go down at least 30 to I've seen as much as 70%. My best house ever was an 88% reduction. So that's huge because this job is funding itself because the money you don't spend on fuel pays for your financing for this job. So I started doing my first load calculations. Well, in 1986, RightSoft came out and was released to the public, which means prior to 1986, nobody even had the software in the marketplace to do a load calculation the way it is done in RightSoft. And I got certified in RightSoft in 2007, the same year I got my VPI certification. So most of my competitors can't say they've ever gone. 95% of my competitors have never done a load calculation. They walk in and go, "Got 100,000? We'll get you 100,000. You got a builder grade piece of junk? Get you another builder grade piece of junk. I could be cheaper than the other guy." So you could imagine the poor quality you're going to get from somebody who never went to school and never had training in HVAC and he learned on the job. And he's no smarter than the guy who taught him on the job. And if he didn't have a good teacher, he doesn't know much either. So all contractors are not alike. I am definitely a different animal. So like most contractors, they just wing it. So they said you weren't complaining before. Okay, hopefully you won't be complaining now. There's poor or no design, poor installation, low quality product, untrained installers, and the sellers, they tell you just enough information for you to buy. They're going to offer you good, better, best. That means the cheaper one, the middle one, and the more expensive one. And whatever you pick, they're happy selling it to you because they get paid a commission as a percentage. And there's really not that much difference. And no one should ever buy anything that's not high efficiency. To save $2,000 now, you're giving up something like $20,000 later because the savings over the life of the equipment is 10 times more than the money you're saving. So what you don't know will hurt you. Many of the original boilers and furnaces, this is the part, I'm just going to leave this here. I'm not going to go through all of it. Um, they were 50% level, which I said before, there was no minimum efficiency guidelines prior to 1992. So in 85, Wrightsoft was founded. 86, it was introduced to the market. 87, there was the National Alliance of Energy Conservation Act was passed, which did not take effect until 1992, which means before 1992, there were no government standards or mandates for efficiency. So anyone who has any equipment before 1992, you just got the bottom of the barrel and you got what you got. So then they had some updates in 2006 and 2015. The 1990s was the first 90% efficient furnaces that were arriving in the marketplace, but people were not installing them because they cost more. 2005 was the Energy Policy Act, which actually set new standards for heating and cooling equipment, and there was some rulemaking. In 2007, Congress passed the Energy Independence and Security Act, which enacted and updated the standards for heating and cooling equipment. In 2009, we're getting close to where we are now, was the first time the International Energy Code was introduced. So there was no energy code in the United States until 2009, but it wasn't enacted or even adopted by New Jersey until 2011. So that's not very long ago that we still haven't had any energy code. And it did apply to retrofits, which is upgrades. But right now, you can go to some towns and they're not enforcing it. So again, I had solar radiant heating. I had this grandiose idea that I was going to heat houses with the sun. Nobody wanted to pay for that. Solar radiant heating, great idea, but it's only going to happen in my house. I took green building professional courses. I went to school for heating and air conditioning design, and most people didn't do that. I went to Somerset County Technical Institute, which actually had such a low attendance after I left that they actually merged the program with RVCC because they didn't have enough students to attend. When I attended school 4 nights a week, it was six. There were 6 people in the class. 3 of them were in the back playing in the computer on ESPN because we had classroom computers, and 3 people in the front of the room actually paid attention. So that just goes to show you, even when they go to class, they don't pay attention. I actually hired one of those guys, and then I said, "Hey, Vince, you're doing the job wrong. You're not doing it like we learned in school." And he said, "Oh, well, this is faster, and I'm not going to do that. I just want to get out of here and go home." So even when you have an A student, he still didn't want to do it right because he just wanted to go home. So that just tells you the workforce that we are up against. In 2007, this is a game changer for all of us here in electrification. Mitsubishi introduced to the United States the first cold climate heat pump as a mini split. It had limited application and it didn't do very well because they didn't have a good application because we do mostly split systems here where we have an indoor air handler and an outdoor unit. So then the financial crisis hit in 2008, and President Obama signed into effect the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act and injected money into our program for home performance with Energy Star. He also got on television and stood in a Home Depot and said, "Insulation is sexy." Nobody believed it. They don't believe it then. They don't believe it now. But it is the most effective thing that you can do in your home before you ever put in new heating and cooling equipment. So the Arrow money made our company explode. We took off like a rocket. We were hiring like crazy. We hired people we shouldn't have hired because we needed people fast, and we fired those people. And then in 2011, the money stopped, and it was as if somebody pulled the phone out of our wall. Nobody called. Nobody was interested. We had to lay off most of our staff, and we downsized just to become a small HVAC company. And that's what I did right up until about 2022 when I said, "Okay, I'm going back." I still couldn't give up the solar dream. So every time something new came out with solar, I took a class in it to see if I could sell it. Thermal water heating, nobody wanted to buy that either. Um, well, high efficiency furnaces, we did those because in 2009 there were incentives, and that's when all the high efficiency boilers from furnaces all started to go in because people could get a tax credit. And I took every training I could get, and I became a air conditioning and heat pump professional in 2009 when I took a class on from BPI. Um, ACI was the training ground, and I learned how to teach this stuff in 2011. So I was teaching my own people how to do this work. In Fujitsu is when I got certified for heat pumps for Fujitsu, because on the mini splits and on the heat pumps, you had to be certified by the manufacturer in order to sell their equipment. So in 2012, I wanted to start installing the equipment. So I went out and I got certified. And then Manual S was the big push back then, and it still is. It's got some rocky roads on how to calculate to get there, but we're getting there. Enterworks, I still couldn't give up the solar dream. I wanted to put solar hot water in. Nobody wanted to buy it. Um, I went to Triangle Tube and I took all the trainings for that class. I am one of 3 people in the state of New Jersey that are actually certified to work on Triangle Tube equipment. And I get phone calls all winter long, and they always say the same thing. Nobody knows how to fix this. Okay, so I will. And it's a huge part of my business, believe it or not. Servicing equipment that people installed in 2010 and 11, 9, 10, and 11, and didn't know how to service. So it's not a bad gig. Now, here's the history of Mitsubishi. Mitsubishi invented the cold climate heat pump in 2001. In 2007, as I said earlier, they shipped the first cold climate heat pump to the United States. It was a mini split. But then the game changer happened. 2018, they came up with a split system with an air handler. And Fujitsu immediately copied and said, they're doing it, we're doing it. And that's when cold climate heat pumps started to get marketed in the United States. In 2019, I immediately went out because that was the first available class and got certified in Mitsubishi for the cold climate heat pump with the air handler. A side note, same year, Denise buys her first Tesla. 2018, I was at a meeting with as they were introducing us in New York, the Mitsubishi cold climate heat pump, and I signed up on the spot for training, and it wasn't available until 2019. And as soon as I was certified in 2019, I started selling the equipment and installing it to replace oil furnaces. So oil furnaces, there was no other alternative except for electricity, which didn't have a viable option before because the non-cold climate heat pumps couldn't heat the house sufficiently through the entire winter without giving you a $900 bill in January and February. So at the same time in history, the Rewiring America people were starting, and they were doing a lot of lobbying for Congress, which is good for them. And the next thing that happened was the Department of Energy launched the Residential Cold Climate Heat Pump Challenge. So if Mitsubishi and Fujitsu could do it, they challenged American and anyone else, manufacturers, to come out here and do it. So these are the people, besides Mitsubishi and Fujitsu, who have now got a cold climate heat pump that will qualify for the incentive, and it'll go down to -5 degrees to generate heat without the assistance of a backup coil. A little cheater here is Train, is really just relabeling the Mitsubishi. And Fujitsu and Rheem have a partnership where Rheem is making their air handlers, and Fujitsu, in some cases, is making their outdoor units. So Bosch is completely independent. Carrier is what Carrier is. They develop their own. Johnson Control, whatever, Lennox. Dakin is on the scene, but they don't have much to stand. They've had some problems in the past. I went to their training and everything else with their Atharma, but it's a hard sell. And even Medea. Now, who is Medea? No one's ever heard of them. Medea makes a lot of other people's branded product. So they're a private contract packager, but they also met the challenge. So in 2004, they have a lot of equipment out there that is energy efficient. So after this challenge was met, the President Biden signed in the Inflation Reduction Act, and we've been waiting for that money until just recently to come in, and it finally has. So the only thing that has been available for the last 2 years has been the tax credit, and now Trump is going to kill the tax credit because his I will shut up. He's killing the tax credit. So I saw that and I said, okay, you know what? Game on. We have a $3,200 annual tax credit, 2,000 on heat pumps, 1,200 on insulation or other things that can be done, air sealing. I'm in. I'm going back. I'm going to do it. I know how to do this stuff. I just have to ramp up. And I know the value of government incentives because that's how we launched our business the first time. I'm not going to screw it up the second time because I have the contingency plan when the government money goes away. And I know that we're funded at least through the end of 2026. So politics will play on that or not, whether it gets signed again in New Jersey. Will this work? Can we change from fossil fuel to heat pumps? Yes. Will it work in my house? Yes. But it's not easy. All of this needs to be calculated, and this program requires we do heat pump load evaluations. We measure ductwork, and we make sure the ductwork can be handled because the old furnace ductwork, in many cases, is smaller than the requirement for heat pumps. And I'm going to give you a slide as to why, but I'm not going to go through all of it. I'm just going to give you some highlights. So this is a highly specialized field. Heat pumps operate at lower temperature. Gas furnaces are higher. Therefore, heat pumps need larger ducts. Now, we could either replace the ducts, which is an unwise situation, in my opinion, because you're going to throw out small ducts and put in large ducts, and there's no benefit to that. What the wiser decision is to get the house insulated and air sealed first to bring down the load. When you bring down the load, the ducts that are existing will most likely be fine because you're using smaller equipment because you brought back the load. So I have removed old oil customers' furnaces, and they were paying $2,000 a year for the oil. And when they were all done, and this is without a program, they were all done. They were only paying $500 a year to heat their house with a cold climate heat pump. That's a home run, man. That's it. So that's $1,400 a year, which is a little over $100 a month that a customer is generated in surplus cash to pay for a loan to replace the heating system. So it's self-funding for as long as they have the system. Most systems last 15 years. That's an average on national. In New Jersey, they last a little longer because we don't use heating like for about 2 or 3 months out of the year. Actually, probably 2 to 4 months out of the year. Now, always, always, always take the highest quality over the cheapest price. Because I can assure you, whatever it is that made the guy cheaper is something that's going to cost you money in operating expenses. Remember I talked to you about the performance of the comfort for the 14-foot throw, the Hart and Cooley register versus the no-name generic junk brand? This might only cost $4. This costs $60. This will make you happy. This will make you miserable. So, performance is more important than the cost. Just because somebody says I'm cheaper does not mean it's better. It's never better. So what's the plan? How do we do this? The first thing we want to do is we want to get an energy audit. We want to find out your baseline. We actually want to do a home energy audit for two reasons. Number one, it's required for the program to gain additional incentives. But number two, it's to get a baseline on what your house is doing now so that we can put together a load calculation. It's going to take a contractor. anybody who's doing a load calculation, and I have done hundreds of them, it's going to take between 6 and 8 hours of work. By the time you go to the house, you measure the house, take the pictures, evaluate, figure out the windows, figure out where they're located, recreate the house in a software program. It's going to take 6 to 8 hours worth of work time and payroll. Nobody works for free. I've never met any employee that worked for free. So it's going to cost a real cost between $1,000 and $1,800 to do a load calculation. And I can promise you this, no one is going to do a free load calculation for you and then give you the numbers. They're going to tell you that they did it, but somewhere along the process, after you've signed with them or along the process of signing with them, you're going to want to see the load calculation that it's actually your house. And as Steve and I have found out, people are not doing load calculations and they're telling you that they are. There are three companies that are huge in New Jersey, and I will not name them because I don't want to get sued. But in the summertime, a friend of mine who's in Succossana asked me if I can come on and do their work because they had three people in and they didn't really feel comfortable with any of them, but they know what I do, and they asked me to come up and do it. So I said, sure, I have to do a load calculation. They said, oh, don't worry about that. The other people did it and they sized it. I said, really? I said, what did they tell you? Oh, they told me I need a bigger air conditioning and I need the same size furnace. And it was a townhouse. And I looked at it and I said, not on your life. There's no way. I'm definitely doing a load calculation. I spent the 6 or 8 hours. I did the load calculation. And what I found is that we were reducing the size of the air conditioner. We were reducing the size of the furnace. And the air conditioning became 2 tons instead of the recommended by the three largest players in New Jersey. They recommended a larger system and they said they did a load calculation. And two of them were only in the house for 10 minutes. So I really don't know how they measured anything. Then they said they needed a bigger furnace or the same size furnace, which was 100,000 BTUs. And my load calculation revealed that that house only needed like 27,000 BTUs. So I said, we're going to downsize this to the smallest furnace that the manufacturer makes, which was 50,000 BTUs. So they were floored. They were like, how can everybody else be telling me I need 100,000 and they need, a 3-ton system instead of a 2-ton system? Jim, if I didn't know you, I don't know if I would trust you. And I said, but I know who you are. I know what you do and everybody loves it and everybody recommends you. So do it. And I did. And they actually saved money because I used smaller equipment. And I did an amazing job. I actually videotaped that job and they said, oh my God, nobody even mentioned these things that you're doing for me that we're going to go into that job. As a matter of fact, it doesn't say anything about this. And I said, well, that's just how we roll. That's what we do. I don't ever want to come back here and have you tell me that, you weren't happy with anything. So, that's what I do. So now Steve and I have had this conversation, which is why I put this slide in here. So Steve was given some information on how to calculate the size of a heat pump that he needs for his daughter's house. And I said, no, Steve, I got to use the RightSoft program. And he's like, yeah, but they only use so much fuel and gas this year. And the way I calculate this is, we're going to need this. And I says, well, great. But the way we size the heating system in a home is to the coldest 2 months of the year, which in New Jersey would be January and February. So the rest of the year, it's going to fluctuate up and down. And what's really great about the new cold climate heat pumps is they will actually modulate up and down based on the required need. But if we insulate first, we could actually lower that further than just what you actually need because it was originally oversized in a house. So we want to weatherize the house first. Then I'm going to show you the difference in the load calculation. Since everyone's going to get these slides, you could take a look at this house that was insulated and just the difference that the insulation made compared to a non-insulated house. So the before, which was the current conditions, this was my benchmark from the energy audit, and I recreated the house, and it said we needed 71,000 BTUs with an uninsulated house. And it said we needed to heat it. And it said we needed 42,000 BTUs with an uninsulated house to cool it. So then we actually did this job and we insulated the house. And what we installed with an insulated house was 32,000 BTU system. Actually, we got the smallest one they made at the time, and it was a two-stage system. So I'm sure it never operates on high stage. It always operates on the low stage. And that is going to give them a 54% savings, energy savings for what they're paying. It's the money they save. And I calculated the money they were going to save on this job actually paid 100% of the loan because we took an oil furnace out and they were only paying $84 a month on a loan. So, and their savings was a lot more than $84 a month. So they were cash positive from the very first month. The air conditioning savings and the reduction in the size, the uninsulated home was 42,000 BTUs. The insulated home was about 18,000 BTUs, a 59% reduction in burden to the house. That's amazing. So now when we take our load calculation and we decide that this is what we need for our house, we go to the list for cold climate heat pumps that are going to get 25C tax credits. And then we match up the equipment. And there's a column here. If you look on the right-hand side, it says heating capacities. And then we want to match that up to whatever the house is. So at 5 degrees outside, we're going to have these capacities. So if we have something that is close, and I'll go back to that last slide, something close to 32,000 BTUs on this page, and I took a random page. I didn't look for 32,000 BTUs. Then it would say, okay, this is what I need for this equipment. And then I would put that equipment into that house. So that's how we size it. So this is an old oil system that we took out in one house. And this is the Mitsubishi system that we put in, the heat pump. And this house replaced oil and had an energy savings of 54%. So they were paying $2,000 a year in oil, and now they paid a little over $400 for their heating bill. I would consider that a home run. So I've been a cold climate heat pump installer, for a long time, since 2019. And again, it's more important to get a qualified installer who knows what he's doing, can do a load calculation for certain, and does a good job and really cares about getting the job done well, rather than, yeah, we could do it. We'll get it done in a day. We'll get out of there, get in, get out, and be on our way. We'll make our money and run like hell. You need to find somebody who really cares. And that is really hard because there's not a lot of people that care because they're just trying to run a business and make a living. It's sad, but it's true. The obstacles we have to overcome is heating and cooling load balancing. Now, you've seen this before in other slides for other presentations, and I have a quick slide on it also. We want to do as low of cooling as possible, the smallest system as possible, and we want to put just enough to heat the house so that we don't overcool, because in this case, the old systems, the furnace was separate from the heating, from the cooling. So therefore, we had control over the size of both. But on a heat pump, the heating and the cooling are the same unit. So we want to load balance as close as possible. Duct sizing is critical when switching from fossil fuel to heat pump. The maximum energy equipment sizing for the home, we don't want to go any bigger than exactly what we need. And then finding qualified companies is probably going to be your hardest challenge because people who want to design and install the systems correctly, they're rare. So they're not in abundance, even when they say they're good. And that's why the last company, he was in the program, but he told Steve he wouldn't do the job because Steve wanted to do it right. And he was he was going to hit and run it. He was going to run in, make a quick buck, and be off to the races. So the heat pump balance point is we want to be as close to the middle as possible for having a small air conditioner and a just big enough heat pump for the heating requirement. When we size a heat pump, we size for the heating load, but normally in air conditioning, we size for an air conditioning load. So, that's important that we understand that the heating is going to be bigger than the air conditioning. So that's the other great thing about these cold climate heat pumps is that they are modulating, and they have inverter technology. So proper duct sizing is critical when you take out the furnace and put in a heat pump. So anybody who's not addressing your furnace, and especially your return air, throw them right out of your house. Don't even listen to them, because they're going to screw it up. You're never going to be happy, and then they're not going to get it right. The worst thing you could do, oops, is not address that issue. Sealed ducts in the attic and the insulation. It's critical. We can lower just by sealing the ducts, just by insulating and sealing the ducts. You could lower your heating requirement by as much as 32%. Where I got these numbers from is we had a customer that all we did was seal and insulate the ducts, and this was their actual savings, or actual cooling reduction, I should say. And their savings was even bigger because they were on propane. So never buy in a crisis, because people panic buy, and then they don't make good decisions. So always do your homework, always do your research. And Steve asked me to put together, I'm going to have to do this, but I didn't have enough time to put together a checklist so people know what to ask for. Because as soon as Steve put together a checklist and knew what to ask for, the other guy bailed, and then he had to go find somebody else. So, and they looked at it and said, yeah, we can do this. And so now he's going to get a better job, and it's going to save him a lot more money because of decarbonization. So everyone asks, how much does it cost? The minute you tell them what you need, the first thing out of their mouth is, how much? Let's figure it out first, because there's a lot of money to be given out. And I think Steve said he's going to save 60% on the cost compared to the job the other guy was going to do wrong. So he was going to do the job wrong, and it was 60% more in dollars. But by going through the clean heat program, Steve's daughter is going to save a ton of money. She's going to get 0% financing for 10 years on bill repayment. And here's our decarbonization checklist. So we have to fill this out for every job. And you'll get some ideas about things that are here. So this could actually give you some idea about what you need to ask for. There's 0% on bill financing, and you could read this on your own. And these are the requirement documents we're going to have to put together. And there is also some extra money for low to moderate income people. There is a form for every application that everyone fills out for the on bill repayment, whether or not you qualify for lower to moderate income additional savers. And in some cases, if you're poor enough, you could actually get it done for free. So that's good. Now, just when you think it's all over and you're going to do decarbonization, there's even more money. So if you've never had your house sealed and insulated, then you want the whole home program, which they just beefed up and added more money to that system. If we can show on a computer that you're going to save 33% in energy modeling, you can get an additional $7,500 additional to the decarbonization money. And I didn't calculate what Steve is getting, but he could share that with us at the end for how much money he's going to get from decarbonization. But if the home was not already air sealed and insulated, he would have been eligible potentially for another $7,500. Folks, that's a home run. You just, I don't know where you're going to get any better than that. You're going to get a better premium job for less money than somebody would be charging you for just a replacement air conditioning and heating system. So this year, we're losing our incentives for taxes for a lot of the programs that Joe Biden had passed. And Denise decided to run out and buy her second Tesla. So turned in the old one, got the red one. So she was pretty excited. While we were at the dealership, she said, I said, you should get the red SUV. She said, no, I like the Model 3 better. And I kept pushing her for the SUV. She said, get your own SUV then. So I did. So now I have a VinFast SUV, and we both have electric cars in the house. And my only um, vehicles that are not electric anymore are work vans. And as soon as I can get a work van that has enough mileage where I can keep the guys in the field all day without recharging, we're getting rid of all the fossil fuel vehicles and we are getting all electric. So they just don't have the mileage yet. And I'm afraid that I would send people out for the day and they wouldn't make it back because they just don't get enough. Um, this is a top 10 reason. I'll let you read this on your own of why you should get rid of fossil fuel. And number one is health for the air that we breathe. We'd like to breathe it cleaner. The federal tax incentives, the 0% financing, uh, electric pricing is generally stable. When I wrote this slide, that was true. And then we had a little scam done to us last year. There's no risk of carbon monoxide poisoning, so it's safer. There's no risk of flue gases getting into your home and killing your family. There's no risk of fossil fuel leaks in your house and blowing it up. Um, you have cleaner air, zero on-site pollution. Um, on no on carb, you could read all these, and we're reversing global warming, which I think is the most important thing. Because if we're pulling heat out of the air and putting it in our house, we are going to reverse global warming. And just the satisfaction of knowing that you're leaving the planet in better condition than you found it or that it is currently in. And I think that's a gold mine. That's a home run. So this is important to understand because we had Sue Dorward on here. I did her house. She has a 3,100 square foot contemporary home. She is 100% heated by one single heat pump. So after today, because there's actually larger equipment that has been released in the last 2.5 months from Mitsubishi and a few other manufacturers that actually can be larger to handle larger size homes. So Sue's home was already energy efficient because we reduced the load, we sealed it, we insulated it, and then we put a cold climate heat. First, we installed a high efficiency furnace, and then one day she called me up. She says, "Jim, I want it out. I want a heat pump. I don't want to put any more carbon in the atmosphere. I don't want to kill my family's future. I want them to have a better planet than we inherited." I said, "Let's do it." We did it, and we have a single unit that heats the entire house. So if anyone tells you you need dual fuel on something smaller than a 3,000 square foot home, they're lying to you because they don't understand how to do this correctly. So find somebody else. They're not your guy. So they just don't have the knowledge and they're not interested in doing the job correctly and they don't want to learn. So, find somebody who's willing to do this job correctly for you. Otherwise, don't let that guy do it. There's no reason to do dual fuel in 2025. All the technology's here, the equipment is available, and if you reduce the load in your house first, you do not need dual fuel. I don't know if I can stress that enough. So, if you have any questions, hopefully you put them in the chat. And I told Steve I would stay as long as I could. I'm glad I got through the slide deck in under an hour, which I'm kind of impressed, actually.
Before we go into questions, can I just add in my own experience now? You've been citing my name a number of times.
Absolutely.
The first step for my daughter's house was 2 years ago. I contracted with the seal to do the weatherization and sealing of the house. And it dramatically changed the house performance of what it took to heat and cool the house. But the second step, which I just completed this morning, actually, I had gone to serial. One more person after a minute. Hold on. So I had gone to a series of 3 vendors to get quotes to see what's going on with what's possible for a heat pump for my daughter's house. And it was really only the 3rd vendor who I met with this morning that really made sense with the right size heat pump. He knew his business, he knew heat pumps, and it was Mitsubishi, which is I was aiming for the highest quality vendor. And let me tell you the result. The result was When I showed him the previous quotes, he said, "Oh, he'll just measure my house," and instantly, then within 30 minutes, he had gone to his laptop and actually had calculated the heat load for my house, my daughter's house. And with that heat load, he knew exactly, and it was agreeable with one of the quotes I got. And so he then proceeded to tell me what the price would be. The total price for this house, oh, one more factor I should say. The house was built in 1960s. At that point, material called transite was very often, frequently used for the underfloor ducts in slab construction, like my daughter's house. Transite is a high percentage of asbestos. And in fact, the New Jersey EPA had tested it in 1980s and tested 8 houses. And 3 of them had unacceptable high levels of asbestos in the airflow into those pipes. Nothing became of that finding. I find no other references except the industry stopped installing those pipes. So my wife and I decided we did not want to uh, have our grandchildren exposed to asbestos, possibly in defective or deteriorating pipes, underfloor slab. So we wanted to install new attic ducts with a new heat pump. With that in mind, and the ducts themselves are pretty highly labor intensive. The total price for this was $26,113. There were $14,000 in rebates from PSEG. That's 60% of that price. And I got the contract for $12,000 and got a 0% interest-free loan from PSEG. My daughter got this loan for that amount. Her total out of pocket was $200. Now, we haven't really settled the contract. We haven't paid the 200. They need to come through with another crew of people who understand how to assemble the ducts. And I gave them Jim Price's duct list of requirements, and they said, okay. So we'll see what happens with that. But so next Wednesday, I expect to get the walkthrough to size everything. But I do have a contract with my daughter signed, not yet paid, for $200. PSNG, the weak point here is that PSNG takes time to qualify and then grant the 0% interest loan. So it might be maybe a few weeks before this is really settled. But I'm very pleased with the result. My daughter's very pleased with the result. Her total payment will be $100 some per month taken out of her utility bill. And I'm sure she'll be able to pay it off. You can pay it off at any point. She'll be able to pay it off at some point, not over 8 years. So I'm very pleased with that. So that's my story. I highly recommend going to multiple contracts, try to bring all the data you can get together in one spot. Have the final guy. I went to the factory, first of all. I went to the Mitsubishi factory website. I told them my daughter's zip code, and they gave me a list of qualified vendors who are the 1-star, 2-star, 3 stars. I went to the 3-star first. So basically, I went to the factory, the Mitsubishi people, and they helped assign people for me, and I was very pleased with the result. So I'd recommend people do that. Go to the Mitsubishi site and see what happens, and you might just be very happy. So that's my story. We're open for questions, I think.
One other thing, Steve,
Yes.
tell them what the first load calculations that you
Oh,
received, well, how many
yeah.
BTUs versus the one I gave you.
Yeah.
The other fellow
No.
confirmed.
Oh, yeah. So it turns out they were throwing in these. One vendor actually uh, quoted me a high performance. I think it was a three ton heat pump, but without revealing anything about the data. In fact, I asked him to provide me the calculated data, and never came through with that. And so my suspicion is he did not do the load calculation. the manual J calculation. The second vendor gave me a couple of quotes, and they still were high. I had also done calculations of my own. And then Jim gave me his calculation. The third vendor I got agreed with Jim prices within 2,000 BTU per hour, and recommended a 2-ton heat pump. And that's what we actually contracted for this morning. I'm going to be very pleased. I know I've actually plotted the load performance versus 2-ton and 3-ton. I know that's going to be acceptable based on using NEEP online resources. So there's a lot of things that are available to you that the coaches will know about. So I encourage you to go to the New Jersey Electrification Coaching. And if you have questions and need help, they will be glad to help. Jim Price is there in Bridgewater area. I don't know what your service area is, Jim. Maybe you can tell us.
Hunterdon, and a little piece of Middlesex.
Okay. If you're in that area,
and a little
maybe
piece of Morris because it dips down.
Okay. Thank you. So you've heard Jim Price talk, and so he's one of the trusted vendors. So you can trust him if you're in that area. Otherwise, follow what I just said. Go to the manufacturer and have them assign people. How's our questions? My wife has joined us. I think she's on here. I don't see her. Pat, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Super. What we said is we would handle questions. We said we'd go till like right now with the formal end of the presentation. And now Jim will be available to handle questions.
I can't see the questions though because I came on at the end and the chat doesn't show before I came on.
Oh,
So
that's
somebody
right.
else has to go through the questions. I just
Yeah.
answered the last one, which you didn't say that that we got or that our daughter's job is in PSE&G territory. PSE&G is active in this BPU program, but they're really utility programs, and our utility JCP&L apparently still is not active. I don't know about the other two.
I could see these questions if you want me to start answering some of them.
Oh, I think that would be helpful. For everybody else, we're going to be providing some sort of digest of the questions. It might be another hour. I don't really know what's going to happen. And we'll be recording them as well, but they probably won't be included in the recording that's sent out. But the idea would be to take these video answers and put them into snippets answering certain questions. So you don't have to go through another hour of recording.
Okay. Do you want me to start
But
answering
I would
no?
just start answering the questions, sir.
All right, so Kathy Lynch, I apologize. I didn't know that there was a different mode I should have been in, but thank you for bringing that to my attention. As Steve will tell you, I wasn't very
We
good at
tried.
sharing this
Yeah,
today.
we tried it before anybody joined. We were trying to get things working. What you saw on the screen was the best we could do in the time we had. So I did not answer the question, but that was the answer. Nothing we
Enos
could do.
Bengal,
Sorry.
what is Triangle Tube? Triangle Tube is a boiler. It's a high efficiency boiler. It's like 95% energy efficient, which means it takes 100% of the gas and it burns 95% of it. And in my opinion, it's the finest boiler made because there's a lot of other things that it does to regulate temperature. It will modulate based on the outdoor temperature up or down. So if you only need a little bit of gas, a little bit of heat today, because it was only a little bit cool, then it only burns a little bit. And then on the January,
I don't hear Jim. Does anybody hear Jim?
No.
Jim, we don't hear you. We don't know what happened.
I heard him, but I think on my end as well, I think there was a small internet glitch type of thing for all of us, but I was able to hear him.
And then his picture disappeared.
Hello,
also.
Jim. You've come back to us. You have to unmute. Still have to unmute. I will try to unmute you remotely.
I'm unmuted.
Oh, super.
Okay, I'm glad I didn't lose all those things in the chat. Before publishing this, remove the name and address of the house on slide 62. Okay.
We'll do that. We actually censored it already by removing a social security number.
I didn't realize it was part of my grade. I had my social security number. I'm transparent. I have nothing to hide. So, are heat pumps noisy? No, they're actually quieter than air conditioners. I live in a townhouse and I don't want to disturb my neighbors. Perfect, because it's quieter than most air conditioners. Is it a good idea to have a fan on at all times with a heat pump? I'd say yes and no. It depends on your personal preference. The only reason to put a fan on all the time would be to circulate the air throughout the house. If you want to just keep air moving. I always turn them off actually, because there's a setting. And it's on number 25 is your setting. Well, I remember it because a lot of people complain that they would like to turn off the fan. It always runs. So, but yeah, it's your personal preference. It's just to mix the air in the house and, run it, don't run it. It doesn't matter. I don't know if I didn't answer that well enough, then please tell me that in the chat so I can answer more of what you want to know. So, would you recommend a variable inverter? Absolutely. Versus one speed system. I would never recommend a single speed system. Inverter technology is definitely the way to go. You're going to save a lot of money on energy. It's only going to heat what it needs to heat. It's going to damp down. See, one of the things that we worry about, especially why we always want inverter technology, is air conditioning. So there was a slide in there about the balance point that Steve has covered in the past, which is very critical. Because when we size for a heating system, we are going to oversize the air conditioner. So what is amazing about the inverter technology is it allows you to reduce the air conditioning load, because the smaller the air conditioning load, the better. Why? Because we're going to take more of the humidity out of the air and you're going to be more comfortable. So if we have a thermostat that's going to regulate our temperature, it's going to turn off when we set temperature, but not humidity. But the inverter technology will ramp the system down so it runs longer and it takes more humidity out of the air and you'll be more comfortable. So absolutely, because we've oversized the heating system side of the heat pump, we definitely want inverter technology. Never put a single speed system in. Even if it's cheaper, you're not going to be happy. So, so what is the price difference? It doesn't really matter when it comes down to comfort. It's not enough. It's definitely not enough for you to do that. And how do you sell the customer? I'm not sure how I mean that. I have all the facts, so it's just I laid all the facts out and I explain what the deals are, what the opportunity is, and what the benefits are. And customers just 9 times out of 10 say, "Oh my God, we're killing global warming. We're reversing global warming. We're making my house safer because I don't have gas in it anymore. We're going to prevent gas from ever getting in my house. Where if it ever produces carbon monoxide, it won't kill my family because it can't get in the house." Yeah, there's just so many benefits to this. Nobody would want it. So that's like why we talked about induction cooktops. Denise can't wait to get the induction cooktop with the furnace, or with the steam injected oven that she wants. Because like, why do you want to have that smell in your house, or that risk? There's indoor air pollution with gas, and it's not healthy for you. And it really doesn't have any place in the home. And now that we have better alternatives, we should be getting rid of the gas in the home and not let it vent into your living space, into your family. It's just not good for you. If you need more information, Wayne, I could answer it better if you think I could give you more information. Next job would be motivational. I'm very motivated. This is my passion. I don't know if anybody can tell. Thank you, Betsy. I've had Mitsubishi Diamond Contractor come by my house a couple of years ago, and he asserted wrongfully that Mitsubishi did not sell a heat pump air handler. Correct. Since 2017, they made one. 2018, they started to market it in the United States. And 2018-19, I started installing them in 19. So it's not new. Not sell a heat pump air handler. They wanted to sell me a train unit. So be careful, even when the manufacturer recommends contractors. That's interesting. Well, that one part depends on the year they wanted to sell you the train, because train relabeled the Mitsubishi product because they have a joint venture. So what you're getting when you go to Mitsubishi is you're getting when you go to American Standard and you buy the heat pump, the cold climate heat pump, you're probably getting the Mitsubishi with the train label on it. So it's probably the same, which is kind of weird why he wouldn't want to sell you the Mitsubishi, but doesn't make sense. They're the leaders, they invented the stuff. So does your company handle all aspects? Yes. Insulation, duct sealing, heat pump install. Yes. I have two guys that all they want to do is seal ducts. They want to paint, I guess. Or would this generally be a question of dealing with different contractors? No, it's a one-stop shop, William. I never, if you don't have total control over the job, you will not get the quality that you demand. I demand. So yes, everybody is going to do the job the way I want, or you don't get work. You don't work for me. Period. Doesn't happen. So, and that's just my rules, and that's the breaks. Is decarbonization program to yes, it is through New Jersey Board of Public Utilities, but it is not administered through New Jersey Board of Public Utilities. It's part of the program, and it's administered through your individual electrical or your gas company. In PSE&G, they have both sides, so they have gas and electric. The people who only have like Atlantic City Electric, who's the one up north? First
Rockland.
Light, First Energy, JCP&L, they're the electric company. The gas companies only, like Elizabethtown Gas, is not excited about turning over one of their gas companies customers to a heat pump because they lose a customer. Same thing with New Jersey Natural Gas. New Jersey Natural Gas is encouraging dual fuel because they don't want to lose a customer. So, what question? Dealing with different no, it's done. Decarbonization. Yes, but it's specific for each electric utility. JCP&L is not yet active. Yeah, JCP&L is like way behind. We don't know why. It doesn't make sense. PSD&G is way far ahead of everybody else, and that's where I'm going to spend all my time for the next probably the year. They're just far ahead of everyone else. They just, I'm not unsure why they didn't. Who's the BD program? Who's the BD program?
Building decarbonization.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, JCP is not in building decarbonization.
They're doing it, but they haven't gotten it off the ground yet.
Yeah, I know. Mike Winka, there is no separate information on decarb programs on the utility websites. You're probably right, Mike. And there is some stuff, but it's not all of it. And some of the information is still old. They haven't updated it yet. That I could find. They are available, but you have to know what to ask for. Yeah, if you do a search on decarbonization, it's probably faster to get it from there, because even on the PSE&G website, they're still citing the old price for whole home of $6,000. But if you do a PSE&G website web search, you can find it that it's 33% energy savings will get you $7,500 in addition to decarbonization. Now, in some cases, there's an overlap, so you're not going to get the same incentive two times. But yeah, all electric utilities have decarb programs in New Jersey Natural Gas. But again, there is not a separate place on the website listed decarb, although you get additional incentive to go full decarb. That was fast. Was I cover it that well?
End of questions. And the one final comment. Thanks. That was good info.
So, yes, thank you, Wayne. So,
Any questions that people want to pop up right now, or should we adjourn?
just so you know, I've been doing this since 2007, and you know, people along the way have dropped out because it's really hard, and they weren't getting paid on time, and some of that's changing. You can't run a company without money, so you have to be a little patient with some of these contractors because if they do 4 jobs in a row and they don't get paid for 8 weeks, and those 4 jobs are $25,000, that means it's $100,000 on the street that it's their money out of their pocket that they're not getting paid yet. So, and they told us on the decarb, you will not see your money for 8 weeks. So that means if I do a job today in decarbonization with the heating system, I'm not getting paid until Christmas. So keep that in mind. When people are trying to push you, say, you've got to do it cheaper. I'll be honest with you. If I've got to wait 8 weeks and you're pushing me to do it cheaper, find somebody else because, we're already paying to fund your job. So, it's just not happening. This is not easy work. It's not easy work mentally. There's a lot of caveats that can get in trouble and things, they need to be done precisely correct for the clean energy program, or they're not going to give out the money, bottom line. So there's a lot of risk on our part. And if you think a contractor is going to do a load calculation for you and hand it over so you could shop them around, you have no right to that. So, don't ask them for your load calculation unless you're willing to pay for it. And if you're willing to pay for it, I would give it out. But, that's just, it's not going to happen. I'll give anybody the load calculation after we've signed a contract and after we've done the due diligence and we've gone through it. I have no problem with that because I actually do the load calculations, not like some of these other posers who are saying they're doing them, but they're not doing them. And Steve now knows that, other reputable, supposedly reputable contractors didn't do the load calculation. And then when I did it, his eyes were open. He was actually arguing with me a little bit saying, are you sure? The other guy said I needed 3 tons. And then today it was confirmed by another person who actually did the load calculation that, okay, these guys are doing the work, So you really can't expect somebody to do the work for free when it really does cost us money to do that. I have another question. I have reasonably new HVAC system. Is it possible to have duct sealing and an energy audit? Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I don't know where you live, Nicholas, but I have saved people so much money just for duct sealing. So
I have a comment. So you can go to any utilities website and look for the weatherization programs, and they're detailed, both PSNG and JCP&L, probably others as well. So you'll get selected. Based on your income, you'll be put into different programs. But yes, they will do energy audit is the big thing first.
well, it's the baseline. You have to see what you have, what you're starting from. And, I think, Steve, you went to go lobby to make sure load calculations were done. Bravo to you, because we're finally going to get some quality work if they enact that. Because right now you can go to some jurisdictions in some townships and they're asking you for the load calculation, which is crazy. Because nobody ever did one before. And you should always get that done. Why in the world would you build a house without a plan, right? So how the heck can you recommend a system without a load calculation, especially when everybody was guessing before? That doesn't make any sense to me.
There's one more question from Peggy Midell.
I tried PSE and G, and they would not even come out. PSE and G isn't doing the audits, to my knowledge. We're supposed to be doing the audits. So what PSE and G will do is if they get a customer like that, they send me a lead and they say, go, this person wants an energy audit. And then we're calling back as long as it's within our jurisdiction and, our scope of area of work, because we really can't drive all over the state because it's just not cost effective and, we can't be everywhere. I have a question about maintenance of mini split installed in 2019 Fujitsu. How often do you have to clean it, and how much should you be getting it cleaned cost? All right. So first of all, if they're mini splits, they're hung on the wall. It's by the per unit, and yes, they need to be cleaned every year. And if you look inside the bottom underneath from where your fan is, if you see anything on your fan, any debris, that's costing you money. And it's probably costing you more money to use the electricity and make it work harder than it is to get it cleaned. Then the other part of that is if you raise up on the top of your mini split, there's going to be a door. If you raise it up and you see all this soil and dirt in there, or mold and bacteria, it needs to be cleaned because you're blocking the airflow. So you need to not block the airflow, and your system won't run as long, so your electric bill will go down. So the maintenance and the cleaning actually offset the cost of electricity. The estimate I got was 18. Wow. 1,800. I want to work in your area.
Wow.
That's probably a lot more than I've ever charged for maintenance. What area do you live in, Peggy? What county or what town? Ocean County. Wow. I won't ask on public record who offered you that, but maybe you should look around.
Yeah, I'm willing to tell you on public record because it's a
Well,
big company. Can I tell you? Can I say
I don't
it?
want to badmouth anybody, but
Oh, I will. As I was on another webinar where somebody said that. It's AJ Perry, and I looked around trying to find anybody to come maintain this, and I couldn't find anybody, and they're the ones I found to do it.
how many units do you have on the wall?
One.
Oh my God. Oh yeah.
And I clean those, the other filters, I do clean those, but it seems like it's getting more soot in it than it has in the past. So then I was wondering, well, how can I clean it myself?
Yeah, well, here's the problem with cleaning it yourself. Number one, if you don't know what you're doing, and I'm not saying that you couldn't learn, first of all, we don't want to use any chemicals if we don't have to. The only time I ever use any chemicals if it's kitchen grease, and I have no choice because I can't get the kitchen grease out of it. And I want to use something gentle, because we don't want to damage the fins. If you
Yep.
bend the fins when you're cleaning, I have a special. It's looks like a mini power washer, but it doesn't have high pressure. It doesn't go above 30 psig, pounds per square inch. So it sprays enough to get it the fluid through and clean it out, but not so much that you're going to damage it. I've gone to people who've tried to clean their own, bent all the fins over, and then you either can't get them bent back because it's so bad, or you're going to charge them a lot of money to straighten them out one at a time. So, if you know what you're doing, that's okay. And I don't recommend chemicals because you could ruin the aluminum fins and then they disintegrate. And we don't want to
No,
do that.
I
Some
don't
of
do
them are
chemicals.
coated. What's that?
I don't do chemicals. That's not
Okay,
an
I
option.
don't either, if I don't have to. Like I said, if it's in the kitchen and I can't get the grease out any other way, there are gentle biodegradable chemicals, but I don't want to use chemicals if I don't have to. And then like the fans, I actually take them apart. Well, the Mitsubishis I do. Fujitsu is a hard thing to take apart, but like the Mitsubishis, you could pop them out a lot easier, and then you can clean them outside the unit, and then you can, I don't want to say power wash it, but you can put a lot of pressure on to clean those up. But the coils, we're not taking those out, and we can't. Change your filters more often or clean them more often. You just run them under the sink water. You
Yep.
can run soapy water. As a matter of fact, it's better not to run soapy water. It's better to run just clean water because there will not be a residue on that mesh netting, and things are less likely to stick to it.
Yeah,
So
that's what I've been doing.
yeah, 1,800 is a lot of money for one.
That's
One contractor gave me a quote. He said he's charging $200 a unit, and what they do is they
That's about
drape
right.
it with plastic, so the water runs down into a pan on the floor.
Right.
Nothing else gets touched.
I-
And yeah, $200 a unit.
I actually imported a special unit for that from directly because they wouldn't sell it in this country anywhere, directly from who's the other Taiwan. And I had to look on the website with Taiwanese writing, and I just clicked and got lucky and I ordered it. And it was very expensive, but it was very worth it because the stuff they sell in this country is absolute garbage. And that stuff was heavy duty plastic and it was really great, never leaked, was terrific. And I love that thing. So it was a little bit expensive, but I really don't care because I didn't ruin anybody's living room carpet, none of their walls. It's didn't leak. The other stuff, I find things that leak. And I had a heat pump installed 2 years ago. I'm delighted for saving the money on electric and avoiding gas fumes. Very good, Mary. Now I need to decide about hot water heater. I don't have a space for hot water. Oh, for a heat pump water heater. Does a solar hot water heater also take similar space? It's a tank, so it's going to take the same amount of space. A tank will take the same amount of space. I think it's a great idea, but people were people didn't want to buy the solar hot water heaters. I'm not sure if anyone's even carrying them anymore, but you have to get up on the roof. They're very expensive. And they heat about, you're going to store about 120 gallons. So you're going to have a lot more water than you are with a heat pump water heater. Now, Steve gave me a really good lead on General Electric water heaters. I did my research on the GeoSpring and I said, this is the next level, the next generation. I want it. And I have
I
been
did
trying
too. I say it's for
desperately to
me.
buy one. What's that?
I was sold as well.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
I actually, the GE rep, I called him today and he was supposed to get back to me. I don't know if he did or not yet or not. Because they have distribution, it's limited. And I just want the darn water heater, man. Get me the heaters. So I want to put them in. So, but yeah, yeah. What do you do for a water heater now, Mary, if you don't have a water heater? If you don't have a tank? Or do you have a tank?
I have a gas now.
Is it a tank?
It's a tank, yes. But
Oh,
my understanding was I just started typing, the heat pump water heaters require a great deal of space around them, like in a basement, but I don't have a basement.
the heat pump water heater requires air space to
Yes,
circulate,
that's what I mean.
not
I don't have,
physical space.
I understand, but I don't have a place for that because I have a crawl space, not a basement.
Is that where your water heater is in the crawl space now?
No, it's in a closet in my kitchen, off my kitchen.
Okay, so you could put a louver door on there. And
I
then-
have a louver door on it, yeah.
Okay, then put it in there. And the GE, you don't have to oversize it. So if you have a 50-gallon now, the GE is a 50-gallon tank. And that's one of the reasons I want to use that, because we don't need to go to an 80-gallon tank, which a lot of the other traditional heat pumps are 80-gallon tanks. So we
Yeah.
want to store 50 again. It overheats the water and then mixes it and then tempers it back down to 120. As it goes out, it has an electronic mixing valve, which I do not like the old mixing valves, but electronic mixing valves are more accurate. So you'll get 120 degrees coming out. So that's what I love. That's one of the things I loved about GE. They fixed all the things that were wrong with the old heat pump water, the first version, the first go round of the heat pump water heaters.
Thank you.
I wanted to make a point though that A.O. Smith, if the closet is too small, A.O. Smith will void the warranty and require you to duct it so that you have ducts to the airspace.
There's another alternative, and it's called a split system heat pump. And I think it's Sanco who makes it. And there's an outdoor unit and an indoor unit. And what they do is they install it like a heat pump, a regular heat pump. And you put one unit outside and it makes the hot water on the inside with a storage tank. So I think it's Sanco that's doing that. And there's a couple other ones like that. So that would
But
be an
they're
alternative
expensive.
that you just
Thank
put the
you.
storage tank on the inside and then the actual unit that does the work is outside. Is the GE heat pump water heater? Yes. Well, GE now makes water heater heat pumps, and they also make cold climate heat pumps. So they do both, and they're prime in both. In other words, they're the manufacturer. It's not being manufactured by somebody else and they're putting their name on it. Where a lot of that's going on in our industry right now because some people want to get into the space, but they didn't do the homework and the research. So they're having Medea or somebody else private label their brand of water heater or their brand of it's not water heater, but their brand of cold climate heat pump. But Medea is prime, meaning they make it. That's it. These are easy.
Yes. So I'd like to invite, before everybody leaves, we have next webinar. It's 1 month on November 20th. If you ever heard of balcony solar, we are going to feature it, where you hang a panel or two on your south-facing wall somehow, like on a balcony railing. And it's very, very popular in Europe. And there are people in this country who are trying to get it past the utilities and authorities. And you're going to hear all about it on November 20th.
And if anybody wants to email me or text me later on, my contact information is in the slide deck. I always answer the questions. And, if there's anything that I could do, actually, what I want to do is make more videos on answering people's questions. So, it doesn't matter because sometimes a question might need a physical explanation to look at what you're talking about. Simplify solar or to stream line solar permitting and cut costs a lot. Oh, okay. I don't know who Third Act's campaign is, but
Yeah, we
anyway,
have information on that. That was passed by our Assembly and Senate in New Jersey, but it's not yet signed by the governor. And we expect that to happen during lame duck in New Jersey. So we'll have permitting allowed, fast permitting allowed in New Jersey, hopefully next year.
Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't some of the holdup PJM?
I attend many PJ meetings and have not heard of a holdup because of this.
Oh, I thought there were solar systems they were waiting to turn on, but PJM.
Oh, this is different.
This is rooftop solar, I think.
This is like rooftop solar, and the idea is that this bill in New Jersey will reduce the cost by making things really fast. It'll reduce it $4,000 to $6,000 per rooftop solar system. So it's a big deal. I can imagine the local authorities don't like to be bypassed. They want to have authority. That's probably the holdup.
I was a little disappointed in the GE solar shingle people. I had customers that want to do the GE solar. So I called them up and I said, who can I send them to? And they asked me all this information. I gave them all this information and never got back to me. I was like, I'm giving you a lead or I'm giving you sales leads for somebody who is installing these things and you don't call me back. I was like very surprised. But has anyone else had anything positive or negative or from the GE solar shingles? I think it's a great idea.
One of the guys that I talk to all the time that we came into our electrification coaching program, but I had known him before, David Haas, had gotten quotes, and it was at least twice as expensive as anything on regular solar panels. And he just said, it's not feasible for residential installations at this point.
Well, when you say twice as much, because you're getting a roof at the same time.
Right. It was just it was just out of the question for him. He wanted to do it also, and it just wasn't going to work.
Really? Because they always tell you to get a new roof and then put the solar on. And I just wonder what the cost of a new roof and solar is compared to GE solar roof shingles. I don't have any idea of pricings. I have no idea.
Let me see if I can, this was about a year ago, so let me see if I can dig up his emails and forward them to you. So
There was another presenter before. They had a house in Atlantic Highlands, and they were gonna put solar shingles, but then they decided to not to do it. The economics professor at Monmouth University, you would know him, because
Oh, the Burns. Burks. Diane Burke and her husband. What's his name?
John.
John. Yeah.
Yeah,
He's the Monmouth University economics person.
yeah. They had said they were gonna put in solar shingles, and then they decided to not to do it.
I think the one problem is they're less efficient than standard shingle panels, and they're more expensive. And so maybe those two make it. And if you don't have enough room for, inefficient shingle roofing, maybe it makes more sense to have separate high efficiency solar panels instead.
I don't
I-
think we're going to resolve that issue here. Jesse says GAF makes solar shingles that might be worth researching.
Yeah, that's why I called GAF directly, the solar guy, and I asked him who was installing them, and I was giving them, I was already recommending them to a customer that I'm going to put a heat pump in, and they're going to put a roof on. They're building the house new, and it never even got back to me. I said, all I want to do is get somebody to do the work. I'm not even going to be interested in doing any of that stuff. Just, give it to the GC and let them build it. And they asked me all the criteria of why I was in the business and what I did and all this other stuff. And then he never even got back to me. All he had to do is give me the names of a couple of guys that do the work. I don't know why. We'll just say that's one individual failing, not a whole company.
And maybe he couldn't find anybody that could.
Jesse, any roofer can't do it because they have to be certified by GAF, and they won't sell them the shingles. And there's only a handful of GAF installers, and they have to be of a certain caliber. And he told me what they were. But not every GAF roofer can do it. They have to go through a training and certified, and they have to be like one of the elite roofing dealers. A friend of mine's a GAF purchaser, and he's a roofer, and he said he couldn't get them. And then he told me to call the rep, and that's what I did.
Well, Steve, you're in charge.
I think that we should call
we've
it.
gotten to the end.
Yeah, questions are becoming slower and slower to get up here. So I really appreciate, Jim, you giving us this big rundown. It's really an eye opener. I would like to have more case studies in the future.
Now you know why it's so hard to find a good contractor. Nobody in the business before 2014 ever went to school. Or I shouldn't say no one, but very few people did. And, that's unfortunately the state of our industry. So if somebody really wants to do the right thing by customers, then they will. And if they just want to make money and move forward, and then they'll do that. So, and like I said, I had a friend of mine who was an A student in school. I hired him and he didn't do A work. So
thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you next on November 20th. In the next day or two, I'll send out the link to recording and link to the slides. Appropriately censored.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. This was really interesting. Thank you, Jim.
I
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
everybody, for joining
Thank
us.
you. Have a great day.